Hello, my name is Keith Hales with InfoSystems, and welcome to this podcast of Enterprise Technology Spotlight. And today we are going to be talking about storage from a managed services perspective. And so the purpose of these podcasts, again, is just to educate business leaders and maybe executives who are not as familiar with technology on a few very relevant technology topics so that they can make better business decisions for their organization and be more involved in those business decisions, as they move forward. So Robert, thanks for joining us. Robert Goodwin is our Senior Director of Engineering Services. Did I get that right?
You did.
All right.
Thank you.
Good.
Appreciate it.
I'm 2 for 2 so far. So I guess last time we talked a good bit about storage in general.
Yep.
So just to recap, as I recall the last conversation, storage is where your data lives.
Yep.
So your technology environment, it's like a hard drive is on your local desktop. So storage is maybe for your network and for your server systems where all that data lives, whether it's your files or your database or anything like that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. So as far as how does that change from a managed services provider? And then also kind of what are some of the tools, like what are some of the business partners that we partner with that we can help with storage?
Well, so one, I think, IBM, I believe, is sponsoring this particular series. So just to talk real quick about some of the software and hardware packages you have for virtualizations, Spectrum Virtualize. For management, you have IBM Storage Insights, which allows you a holistic view of your environment. And then for like backup and recovery is Spectrum Protect. So that's kind of the three tenets, if you will, of any storage environment.
Okay. So let's talk about those.
Okay.
So I've heard of virtualization like VMware.
Sure.
So as I understand that, that means I can take a physical server and I can virtualize it and I can install multiple virtual machines or virtual servers on top of that.
Correct.
So is storage the same thing, or help me understand that?
It's sometimes it can be viewed similar to that, but it's not necessarily exactly like that. So storage virtualization is literally taking an abstract layer or controller, if you will, that sits in front of all your other storage. Right. So you can have up 2 to 200 storage systems kind of back in the background, and that one virtualization layer, like IBM, it used to be called SVC, Storage Standard Volume Controller. It's now called Spectrum Virtualize. It takes over management and control of those systems, and when you write data to the control layer, it decides where it's going to put it. So you no longer have to think about beyond I need this array to do this or this specific thing to do that. You generalize that a bit. You bring that management layer up one level, right, and it simplifies your day-to-day administration. So a lot of the intelligence falls in behind. Right?
Okay. So as a business decision maker, so what value is storage virtualization? Do I have to rip out all my stuff and put in IBM stuff? How does that work?
No. So one of the beauties with IBM Spectrum Virtualize is it's I call it vendor agnostic. If it's their supported vendor list is long, pages long. So basically, if you can connect to it via Ethernet or fiber channel, it'll support it. Right.
Okay.
So you don't have to rip and replace your entire environment and throw in just IBM gear. That's actually one of the nice things is you can extend your serviceability of an older frame, right? So you could actually just pull that in behind SVC, and you can do it with data hot, right? There's only one minimal outage to be able to get behind it, and then you move the data live. And that's another benefit of storage virtualization is I can move the data around to different storage frames, and the end user has no idea what happened.
Yeah, so what I just heard you say from a business perspective is if I virtualize my storage environment, then I minimize downtime and minimize maybe even the risk to the environment if I have a failure.
As well as reduce administrative overhead, yes.
Okay, so making the IT's job easier as well.
Yes.
Okay, great.
We'll be back with the Enterprise Tech Spotlight podcast after we pause to recognize our partner, IBM Storage. With all of the data storage locations companies use today, local PC storage, network storage, cloud storage, app storage, it's hard to manage storage space, backups, and cost. Unless you have the right platform like IBM Spectrum Storage, which improves the way you manage, protect, and store your data. Your data is your company's lifeblood, whether it's documents, media files, financial records, or email history. And the way you store, manage, and protect it is crucial. Get your company's data storage right by bringing in InfoSystems. We can help you build, manage, and protect your storage with IBM Spectrum Storage. Now back to the podcast.
You mentioned Storage Insight.
Yep.
So what is that? Is that a software I got to add to my system?
It is software. You don't have to add it to your system. It runs in IBM's cloud, right? So you just have one connector, if you will, that allows their cloud to connect to your environment, and it's a one-way street. It basically is only taking small data samples, not of your data, but performance metrics, system health, things like that, right? So no customer data leaves and goes out to IBM's cloud. It's only performance and health stats. So it's not like I got to buy another server and yet another software package to install. You sign up for their software package and you install this agent, and it allows for, again, heterogeneous look across your entire storage environment, right? So you can have multiple storage vendors in there along with IBM and still be able to see what's going on, help manage it. It'll also do predictive analysis on like which storage tier should this data live on? Is it really hot? Is it cold? What is the average age of the system? What's the latest health? It'll also do call home. Mm-hmm. So as the system alerts, IBM already gets it, right? You can use that to help create tickets, so faster resolution to time or faster time to resolution. It becomes a single pane of glass is really what it does.
Okay, so it helps with the ongoing, I'll call it maintenance and administration of your storage environment. So as storage, it sounds like we can virtualize it like we've been doing on the servers for a while.
Yeah.
We can ongoing monitor and maintain it to hopefully get, reduce those oops moments and make life better for everybody, so we don't let the IT going down. And then you said back it up. So, I mean, is backup really important anymore? I mean, talk about tapes and talk about these old things. Is that still something that is important to a modern business?
So there's a common term thrown out that says people say tape is dead. Tape is not dead. Tape will probably not die for a long, long time because you have to have a good backup. All right, your production data is only as good as your last backup. All right? That's kind of an IT mantra, because if it's not really when it happens, there's always going to be that oops, human error, mechanical failure, whatever. You're going to suffer an outage, and you have to be able to recover your data. Because I don't want to be the guy looking at the CEO and saying, "Sorry, lost your data. We didn't have a good backup."
Yeah, that'd be a
very hard conversation to have. So, as an IT professional, I want to make sure I'm good. So, Spectrum Protect, IBM's product for backup, it allows for use of not just tape. You can also do backup to disk. So, if it's called the race to daylight, right? You only have so much time to take a system down, or to do your backup. Because if you do it hot, it's called crash consistent. So basically, it's just as good as if you pull the power plug out of the system. Databases don't like that. They, for whatever weird reason, database administrators want their data nice, smooth, and consistent. Go figure. Spectrum Protect has agents that allows you to do a hot backup, but have it consistent, not just crash consistent, but application consistent. So that's a huge advantage in the race to daylight, right? Because instead of hours to back up a database, I now do it in 15, 20 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. So if a company has, maybe they have a lot of data.
Yeah.
Or maybe they only have a short window to back up their data at night. Tools like Spectrum Protect give them the opportunity to shorten that window.
It does, yeah.
And really shrink that time, so they still get all the backup data they need, but they're not impacting their operations as much.
Correct. Like. Yeah. Which allows for efficiency, right?
Yeah.
Of course, everybody wants you to do more work. It allows you to do more work.
Okay. So we are obviously an IBM business partner, and we partner with other organizations as well. But one of the services we provide is around a managed services provider, which means that we help companies manage their IT. So instead of relying on internal staff and internal knowledge to do all the IT work, we can help partner with companies, and maybe they can offload part of those responsibilities, or in some cases, we have some customers who offload basically all of those responsibilities to us. there's probably, we could spend a whole podcast talking about the business reasons why that some of those decisions make sense at times. But what I wanted to talk about specifically today is if an organization selects to go down the path of having a managed services provider, or they've already selected one, and they've been using one maybe for a short period of time or maybe for years now, is there critical or important things around the data that they need to ensure the managed services provider is doing?
Absolutely.
I mean, is virtualization a requirement? Is the ongoing monitoring a requirement? Is backup a requirement? Like how do these things fall into, the I'll call it the priority that a managed services provider should be doing?
Serviceability is number one priority, right? Again, I think in the last podcast we referenced SLAs. You need to understand what the SLA is where your data lives. Is it a 3 nines or a 4 nines or a 5 nines environment, right? Because again, you know this, but for the audience, each 9 adds time to the length of time, or shortens the length of time it takes to recover.
Okay.
Right. Whereas if you're 3 nines, it's hours. 5 nines, it's minutes. Right. So C-level people like to hear it only takes minutes to come back, or there's minutes of downtime projected. Right. So where the data lives and how, is virtualization required? No. Does it make life easy? Absolutely.
So before we go down the virtualization path, I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Whose job is it to set those SLAs and those timelines? Is that IT's job? Is that the business job? Who's responsible for that?
That's a great question. Everybody wants to think it's IT's job. It's not IT's job. It's the business's job to declare what their data is and what the criticality of that data is. Decisions have to be made on, how long, what's our recovery time objective? What's our recovery point objective? How long can we sustain? How long can we not sustain? That has to be a business decision. IT supports that effort, but IT cannot make that decision. Application owners have, stake in this too.
So what I'm hearing you say is that when it comes to data and it comes to a managed service provider, whether you're doing this all in-house or outsourcing or whatever, there has to be input and discussion from executive and you said, application owners. So there's line of business owners, right?
Yeah.
Who are responsible for those different systems. A discussion around how much can the business tolerate, and then then put it back on IT to say, okay, with this business requirement and with this budget, what can we do?
Right.
Is that the right order, or have I missed a step?
No, I mean there's a lot that goes into that, right? But I think your order and sequence is fairly close, right? But I mean, obviously there's a lot of detail that goes into that effort, and the devil's in the detail. You have to make sure you cover all the details.
Okay. So with these tools that we've talked about with virtualization and Insight and backup, how do those things play into those business SLAs?
A lot. So
let me simplify the question.
Thank you, because that's a very broad.
There.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. So if since we're a managed service provider, what are some of the things that we do to help businesses ensure that we are meeting those SLAs for them? What are some of the things that we take on? Do we take on backups and monitoring those?
So thank you for the simplification. Yes, we try to take on as much as we can from the customer to ensure that the right things are done, and they're done accurate and on time, and at the right times of the day and night. If we don't pay attention to the backups, if we don't make sure that the data is available, if we don't make sure that the connections are solid and good, then we will inadvertently cause outage or pain to the customer. We don't, no managed service provider should ever want to do that. So they should be focused on the core tenets, right? Is it there? Is it safe? Can you get to it?
So just to wrap up, because I think we're at time now, is if you're using a managed service provider and they're responsible for any part of your data, you want to be sure the business is clearly explaining to them what the requirements are, and then holding that managed service provider to those standards. Yeah. And the tools like backup and virtualization and storage insight, which monitors the environment, are tools to help achieve that business goal.
Correct.
And I think I love it when business leaders ask that question, right? Because then we get to talk about what we're doing and being sure that we understand their expectations as well.
Yeah, the communication has to be a two-way street, right? We have to understand what they're doing, and they have to understand how we're going to get there.
Yeah. Right. Well, it sounds like we could spend a lot more time talking about this, but we're going to wrap up for today. So thank you for joining us for the Enterprise Tech Spotlight podcast from InfoSystems. We really hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and we hope that you will be able to join us for future ones.